Hi guys, and welcome back to World of Tanks. And yes, today we're going to be looking at the Champion Panther M10. This should have gone up yesterday, but I really wasn't happy with the garage bit, so I thought I'd redo it. And belated congratulations in order to anybody that was on Team Germany. You can actually claim one of these for free from the in-game store. Anybody that was on Team USA, myself included, unfortunately, we can buy these. And anybody who didn't take part can just buy them from the store. If you did take part and got the participation medal, you will get 15% off. And if you got the MVP medal, you will get 50% off, which takes it down to, I think it was something like 3,030 gold, which, considering the standard version of this is 5,750 in the tech tree, wasn't bad. I wasn't in a rush to get hold of the Panther M10. I had preconceptions that this was just a bad tank, and although it's not a bad tank, it is still pretty far from a great tank. It's I think it's fairly average and just a bit in some respects. So I mean, what is it? I mean, well, it's a Panther. Basically, it doesn't look, it doesn't look much like one, but this is fairly historically accurate. In 1945, I think it was, during the Ardennes, I believe it was. In fact, do you know what? Instead of trying to recall it from memory, because my memory is shit, I think I'll just have a look here. Here we are. Yes, it was Ardennes, and it was in 1945. But basically, several Panthers that assigned to Panzer Brigade 150 were disguised as M10 Wolverine tank destroyers. It was part of a larger operation aimed to cause confusion at the rear of the Allied lines. The idea was that they would drive up behind, sort of sneak around. At a distance, they would be mistaken for Wolverines, and then they could just open fire and cause all sorts of chaos. However, on February 1945, disguised Panthers encountered the 120th Infantry Regiment. 1 vehicle was destroyed, 3 were captured. So that's what it is, a Panther disguised as a Wolverine. And although it did receive a buff in the last update, ever so slightly, to its armour, I do feel that it is a slightly wasted opportunity in some respects. And basically what they did, it's the stock turret off the normal Panther, and we're talking about in-game here. So it's the hull from the Panther, it's the stock turret from the Panther, it's the stock gun from the Panther. And they welded plates onto the side, they welded a plate onto the front. You can see there just in front of the track, there's the angled line where the plate's been welded over, hence no machine gun port. And they welded sort of a plate box on the back to disguise the back, as you can see there. Now, originally, this had exactly the same armour as the normal Panther, 85 on the front, 45 around the sides of the turret. However, there's, plates welded on there. The gun mantle has not received any buff, which is fair enough, because the gun mantle just looks like they've changed it rather than welded anything on, so, it possibly didn't come out any thicker, that's fair enough. But it did get a 5mm buff to the side and a 5mm buff to the front upper glacis, not the lower as far as I'm aware. Now, that basically makes up for the welded on armour, because, like I say, before it was exactly the same and it was just cosmetic, which isn't quite true, because it's still a steel plate. It would still add, thickness to the armour. So yeah, it did receive a bit of love, but I just feel that they have been a bit lazy with that, just giving it a bit of a buff, and they could have really made this something special and something that people actually wanted to buy out the tech tree. Not just this one, that they got for free, but actually what, people that didn't have one would want to buy it. They could have made it so that the lower glacis, as you can see there, when you look at the damage model, that rounded part that's supposed to resemble the bottom of the Wolverine and looks like the bottom of the Sherman's, is just not there on the damage model. Again, that's a big plate. Why not make it spaced armour? Give it a bit of a boost. Why not make that rear bit on the back spaced armour? Because that's what it physically is. If you look at it, it's a small sheet of armour with a gap behind it. Spaced armour. And it would still set off HE before it hit the back of the tank. So, giving it that buff to the front, giving it the buff to the side of the turret, yes, it was nice. Yeah, it was probably needed, because it really should have always been that little bit thicker. But I just feel that they have kind of been a little bit lazy with that, and that they could have really made this something special, because the tech tree version of this is the premium tank that I see the least of in game, because there is this huge preconception that it is a bad tank, and admittedly, compared to all the... Well, yeah, I can't think of one that's worse than this. I can't... Like I say, it's not... I'm not saying it's a bad tank, but it's definitely not a great tank. It's very, very average, and in some respects lacking somewhat. And I cannot think of a tier 7 premium that is worse than this. I'd say all the other tier 7 premiums are better than this one. But I've had some good games in it. So, like I say, you know, if it was a bad tank, it doesn't matter how good you are. You're not going to have any decent games, or, you know, they're not going to be very, very, you know, very good at all. But like I say, it is decidedly average. Stock gun from the Panther. Bigger engine than a stock Panther, but not as... so it's got the same size engine as a Craft Panther, but this is slower. Slower power to weight ratio, and it has not had the top speed increase like the Craft Panther has. It's got a bigger engine than the Panther 88, but the ground resistances are nearly double that of the Panther 88. And it's not that they're particularly bad ground resistances, but the Panther 88 has fantastic ones. So it is kind of a mix of the various different versions of the Panther. But let's have a look. Well, the Panther that we've got in game, should I say. But let's actually get in and have a look at the gun. Well, it's the 7.5cm or 75mm KWK-L70, which is, like I said before, the stock gun on the TankBowl Panther. It does have a very, very slight rate of fire increase. It's 13.33. I think it's 13.04 on the TankBowl Panther. 150 penetration, 135 damage. Now, it is worth mentioning that the 135 damage on this is one of the lowest tier 7 damage outputs, you know, sort of average damage output. Nearly all the other tier 7s, and I'm not just talking mediums, I think like every other tier 7 nearly it does more damage than that, although I don't know if you can include the light tanks in that. That's something I would have to check on. But yeah, that is one of the lowest things, and that's the thing with the Panther. It gets a fantastically accurate gun, fantastic penetration with the, you know, on the comedy gun, the long 75 with the 198 pen. Yeah, so fantastic pen, fantastic accuracy, but the damage is very, very low. But that means that you can use the Panther as a sniper, and you can hit your target, you can hit weak spots, you can penetrate even over the distance because you've got such good pen in the first place. And you can just keep putting hit after hit in. You do have to get a bit closer with this, and I do feel it's more of a second line tank, a bit like the Ziska I reviewed the other day. You know, moving up with the first line, playing support and moving around the battlefield to where you need it. But anyway, back to this. So yeah, 150, 135, 194 on your premium ammo, which is a bit low, to be honest. It is APCR, but that does feel slightly low for that. And then 38, 175 for your HE, which is pretty much standard 75mm values for your HE there. 2.3 second aiming time, which isn't too bad. It could be a lot worse, and I think it might be possibly 2.5 on the TankBowl Panther with that gun, but again, that's from memory, I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, 2.3 is not too savage, and accuracy 0.35 is good. You know, that's a fairly decent accuracy. It's not as good as the long 75, which I think is something like 0.32, or it is on the Craft Panther, but it's still a decent accuracy. You've got a 38 degree hull traverse, which is the same, I think, as the Panther 88, and 10 degrees faster than a TankBowl Panther, but that does have 170 more horsepower, which will make up for that somewhat. And you've got 38 degrees of turret traverse, which again is very, very good. The fully upgraded Panther is only 26, so this does have a good edge with that. You do have a smaller view range though at 350 meters, but you have a pretty good signal range at 710 meters. So with your view range being a bit shorter, that's why I've put coated optics on here. I've also gone for a gun rammer to try and increase that rate of fire to just get more damage going out of that gun, and a gun lane drive just to improve the aiming time, because some tanks that have come out recently, premium ones, have had like an aiming time of 1.7 seconds, and I feel that, yeah, you could put a gun lane drive on it or a vertical stabilizer just to make that even better, but you know, it's already damn good and it's really workable, so I've put a different piece of equipment on which I wouldn't normally be able to. But with this, it does sort of benefit from the gun lane drive, and like I say, coated optics, because of the way that I feel this should be played as a support tank. Outspotting your enemies is a bit more important to me than putting the vents on it. I just feel that it works that way. Supplies wise, it's 109 for your armor piercing, 2,800 for your premium APCR, and 98 for your high explosive. So they are fairly cheap for your rounds, which is an advantage of it being a 75mm. Crew wise, I've not got a very good German crew because of how my German sort of career went. I went straight for the Tiger, got rid of it, you know, typical noob thing, yada yada yada. And rebought a few of them and not really been working on my crews because I've just been doing sort of daily doubles, and that's something I am sort of remedying now and taking the Tiger out a lot more as well. But I've gone for Sixth Sense, situational awareness definitely for this one. Repairs, because this is actually going to be in my Tiger 2, this crew. When I unlock it, I'm about halfway there, no, just over halfway there. But I would definitely say you want off-road driving. I think will be a bonus in this because the ground resistances aren't particularly good. Like I say, they're not the worst, but they're nowhere near as good as like the Panther 88. So yeah, possibly off-road driving. I don't know, maybe controlled impact, not controlled impact. Well, actually, yeah, because the sort of lower tier tanks, you really can do a lot of ram damage. You're quite heavy. Snapshot maybe, because of obviously sitting back, playing that support role, moving your turret about a little bit out of sort of eye line of enemy tanks. But I'd say, yeah, I don't know, situational awareness is definitely a must, but other than that, you pretty much want your standard sort of medium tank skills on it. So Sixth Sense, maybe camouflage, situational awareness. I'd still put repairs on there. Your tracks can absorb quite a few shots if you angle properly against sort of lower tier things as well. And yeah, I don't know, maybe muffled shot, silent driving if you want to make yourself a bit more stealthy and play that sort of supporting role. Now it does get slightly higher. Oh, sorry, I forgot to turn my phone off there. It does get slightly higher concealment than the Tech Tree one because of the sort of all-weather camouflage paint job. It does class as all-weather, but we'll cover that one in a second. And before we look at the modules, it is a tier 7 premium medium. I don't know if I mentioned that it's the tier, so I do apologise, a bit late on for that one. And it does get preferential matchmaking, so you won't see higher than tier 8 unless you platoon up. And its bonuses are 50% silver and 20% XP, which is the same as the Tech Tree one. So, you know, silver wise, it has the potential to earn a fair amount of it. You could fire a lot more premium ammo out of it if you wanted, just to try and get the penetration up towards what a sort of Panther is normally. And I would say you'd still make money at it. You wouldn't make as much, but I would say that you would probably still make money. Now, engine-wise, well, it's 700 horsepower, same as the Crafts Panther, but that gets power to weight ratio of just over 16. This is just over 15 at 15.26. I think in fact, let's have a look. The Panther 88 is quite low, 12.92 with only a 600 horsepower engine, which is 50 less than a stock Tech Tree Panther, but the ground resistances on the Panther 88 are superb, 0.6, 0.8, 1.5. That makes up for a lot of that with that tank. Back to the Champion, and you can see on the damage, oh, I'll show you the damage model in a minute, with the bits I was on about. 15.26, 46 km/h top speed, which is less than the Crafts Panther because that had the top speed increase, but it's the same as Panther 88, Tech Tree Panther, etc. 20 km/h in reverse, which is, you know, pretty decent, but a 20% chance of fire, and it's a big engine block, the back of the tank. Most of the back of the tank is engine block. So if you want to try and damage the engine, set them on fire, just go for the back, basically. The gun is, well, we've covered most of its features, but its elevation is 20 degrees, which is good, it's workable. Anything gets above you, you'll not have any trouble. And minus 8 degrees on the gun depression, and unlike most of the other Panthers, it is over the front of the tank, which is nice. You don't have to angle it weird to get the gun down to your full 8 degrees. It is over the front, not just the side, like it is in a lot of the other Panthers, which is nice. Ground resistances, here we are, look, you see, 1, 1.2 and 2.3, and the Panther 88 is 0.6, 0.8 and 1 point something, so like I say, not quite double, but not far off double the ground resistances, which does make it feel a bit sluggish to pick up speed. and it just seems to struggle a bit with hills. Once you get up to your top speed, though, it will get up there. You know, it's not that bad. It will get up to its top speed. That's not a problem. And you don't have too much trouble maintaining it. But it does struggle a little bit with hills and feels a bit sluggish to get going. Obviously, and the tracks are solid as well. No gaps in them. Turret on top. You've got the radio down in the front right-hand corner of the hull. So if you're wanting to shoot at it, well, if you are shooting from the front, if you go for the left-hand side corner, you're going to hit the radio. If you go for the right-hand side corner, you're going to hit an ammo rack, which is quite nice. I've not had my ammo rack damaged. No, I have had it damaged through the front in this. I was thinking of something else. It's very similar placements, actually, to the Ziska, which I reviewed the other day. I'd get my ammo rack damaged a lot through the front in that. Not as much through this, but I have done, so safe stowage might be just at the back of your mind. If you do keep getting your ammo rack damaged, stick safe stowage on as a cruise skill. If you're shooting at one of these things, though, it is basically below the turret on both sides. The right-hand side of the tank, though, it's just a bit shorter than the other side. But if you aim for the sloped side of the tank, just below the turret, you're probably going to hit ammo rack. Crewman, well, you've got the driver and assistant driver, or machine gunner, hull machine gunner, down in the front there. And then you've got the commander, the gunner, and the loader up in the top. But there is no commander's cupola on this, which is kind of unusual. Or if there is, it's extremely small and doesn't even show on the damage model. Now, armor-wise, well, like I say, it's had a slight buff over the standard Panther. We've got 90 on the front of the hull, 100 on the front of the turret, because it's the stock turret, don't forget. We've got 50 on the side of the hull and the turret, which is nice. Like I said, that's had a 5mm increase, just like the upper glacis. And the rear is 40 on the hull, 45 on the turret. And those figures aren't far off. Some tanks we see, T95E2 springs to mind, it's just a patchwork of different armor values. This is pretty much what it says on the tin. So 1 to 20, top of the turret, engine deck, front deck, and just under those side overhangs, and the rear 3/4 of the hull floor fall into that category. 21 to 30 is the tracks and the front third of the hull floor, and don't forget the tracks, like I say, act as spaced armor. Oh, concealment. I always do that in the other bit. Sorry, I forgot about that. 0.19, 0.15. Slightly better than the normal one, which I think, from memory, around 0.15, 0.16, and moving is about 0.12. So you do get that slight increase. Anyway, sorry about that. Back to the armor. 31 to 50. Well, that's the side of the turret, the rear of the turret, the rear of the tank, and the side of the tank. Not just below the tracks, like a lot of them, but above as well. Just all over. It basically seems to be, like I say, what it says on the tin. 50 on the sides, 45 on the rear, etc. 50 on the side of the turret, 45 on the rear. Or is it 40 on the rear of the tank? Sorry, 45 on the rear of the turret. The only thing that is slightly different on the sides, those 3 rectangles there, and they are actually slightly thicker bits, which is, well, they're represented by tracks on the side of the tank. But they fall into the 51 to 70 category. And they are slightly thicker patches. So if you are shooting at the side of one of these things, just don't shoot at the spare track on the side. You're probably going to go through anyway, but why take those chances? And your lower glacis also falls into that bracket. And this is what I was on about with that extra plate welded over the lower glacis. It really should have, just to make it that little bit more special, given it a bit of spaced armour there, just to give you a slight edge. 71 to 90 is the whole upper glacis, just falls into that category, so 90mm. And then 91 to 120 is the front of the turret, the front of the gun mantle, and a very small strip just inside, as you can see there. So, like I said before, pretty much what it says on the tin. Anybody that's got a Crafts Panther will know that gun mantle, when you're top tier, can actually bounce a few shots when you're using your gun depression. And believe it or not, that extra 5mm on the front has made a bit of a difference, actually, because it's, you know, it's only 5mm, but that's 5mm extra to the physical thickness, which could equate to maybe 10mm extra for the effective thickness because of the angling. You know, I'm not an expert on that, but obviously it will equate to more, so it has made a bit of a difference. And when you are top tier in this thing, and you're against the lower tier tanks, the 5s, the 6s, you can be quite aggressive in this, especially against the mediums and the light tanks, and give it a bit of an angle and they will bounce off your upper glacis. And that really surprised me. Like I say, I had preconceptions that this was a bad tank, and although it is not a great tank, it is by no means a bad one. It is average at best, and you know, poor on some things, but yeah, it's not a bad tank. And if you've got one free, it's alright to drive. It will take a bit of practice, but if you've not been down the German line, it will give you good practice for the higher tier mediums in that line. So, you know, don't make the mistake I did. Go for the Panther, go for the Tiger, because they were great in history. Not know how to use them, think they're crap, sell them, and then when you actually know what you're doing, you realise your mistake and buy them back. So this would be good practice for if you're thinking about that German line. And one last thing to mention is that it is a dual crew trainer. So it will train German and American crews. And that's about it. This has probably been the longest review I've ever done. And so let's just get straight out of this and into the replays and see how it handles. So here we are for the first of the replays. It's Arctic region, technically a tier 8 match, but there's only one tier 8 on each team, and it's a standard battle. And I do apologise for the extreme length of the garage review on this one. It is the longest one I've done, like I said just before, and yeah, I just think there were things that needed to be said about this tank, and I did try and get it down to as short as possible, but that was unfortunately as short as I could get it. So yeah, I do apologise for that, and the next one definitely won't be as long as that one. Now, like I said before in the garage, it does kind of want to be played, or you know, it does kind of need to be played as a support tank, second line support tank, unless you're top tier and you're against lower tier enemies, in which case you can be quite aggressive. Like I said before, that extra 5mm of armour on the upper glacis has made a difference. And if you're shooting at one of these things, I mean, there's plenty of tanks that will come up against this that will have no problem just penning the front, you know, straight through, not a problem. There are lower tier tanks though that will struggle to pen this, and the bad news is for those people, the good news for the champion is that there are, well, it doesn't appear that there are actually any frontal weak spots. There's no machine gun port, there's no commander's cupola, so you know, it really doesn't appear as though there are any. The best chance you'd possibly have, if you've got enough pen or if you're close enough, is the flatter part of the turret just around the gun mantle, or even try just under the gun mantle, although like I say, there don't seem to be any frontal weak spots on it. And I don't know if I come up against any lower tier stuff in this match. I can't remember. That sort of shows you it bouncing off the front the minute I'm trying to take care of this Tiger. I'm just trying to dodge the shots as best I can, using the rate of fire. And like I say, I had preconceptions that this was a bad tank. I don't think it is a bad tank. I just think it's, you know, quite average in a lot of ways, a little bit poor in some. But it's not a bad tank. But like I say, it's pretty far from a great one. It is sort of just quite average. And don't forget, I mean, the Panther, the normal Tech Tree Panther, that will have to use this gun in tier 9 matches. So this only does see tier 8, so it does have a slight advantage there. The extra hull traverse comes in handy when you know, if you do end up brawling against something that's a bit lower tier and maybe a bit more nimble and can get around you, you can actually keep up with it and keep your frontal armour facing towards it because it's better. Now the T29, it looks... Now I can never tell the difference between the 90mm and the 76mm on the T29. But I'd possibly be surprised if the 90mm couldn't pen the front of this from that distance. What is it, 160 pen? So I don't know, could be the 76 that he's got on. And yeah, like I say, you know, it's been a pleasant surprise, this tank. It is a bit mediocre, as some people say. And it's possibly like I said before, I think possibly most, or if not all, the other tier 7 premiums are better than this one in some way. But I think the thing that lets this down the most is its power to weight ratio, I think. I mean, as you can see, when it gets going, you can get up there, get up to that top speed. It's just sometimes getting to that top speed. There's the enemy champion. I was going for the ram, but he tracks me. The T-34-3 just clips him. Yeah, I'm going to take a hit, but he's done, and now my tracks are back up. And this is what I mean about when you're top tier. I mean, essentially, I'm top tier in this match. There's only one tier 8. And against some of the things, you can be fairly aggressive. I've bounced stuff off the front of this, and not just a lucky one, but, you know, reliably, that wouldn't necessarily bounce off the Crafts Panther or the Tech Tree Panther. So that extra 5mm has helped on the front. But I just, I mean, I'm just sort of reiterating for those that skip the replay. Don't forget, I do put the time code in there, and this was a particularly long one, so most of you probably skipped to the replays. But yeah, I just feel that it's a bit of a wasted opportunity, and that they could have done something to make this more special. See, I bounced from the British Bulldog there. That was off my upper glacis, I think, and you know, that's not bad pen really for a tier 6. The next one went through my lower glacis though. But yeah, I don't know, just to make it that bit more special, and like I say, maybe put the Panther M10 back on people's wish lists. And I think they would have done that by well, either doing that, you know, the lower glacis spaced armor where they put that thing over it, or possibly even leaving it with the 700 horsepower engine, but giving it the terrain resistances of the Panther 88 to make it really nippy and a really fast flanker. That would have made it quite nice. But as it happens, I seem to be doing alright in it. I did cock up and leave two ops on though, that I really didn't want to leave on for that one, which is why I ended up with so much more XP. They were for bonus XP, and I meant to take them off, but we all make mistakes. Came second in that match though. The Tiger 1 had a decent match, 2,800 damage. So I was quite happy with second place, and I think it was quite a nice match, 2,500 damage. Done myself nearly. Or just over, was it? So, yeah, not too bad, but it's definitely up against, you know, same tier heavies. It's not a frontline tank. Against some of the tier 6 heavies, it's definitely not. I mean, the 90mm on the M6 can make a mess of this. But, you know, the lower tier, tier 6, tier 5 mediums, tier 5 heavies, you can afford to be quite aggressive with this. In tier 8 matches, you do need to definitely stick more on the sort of rear, you know, well, not the rear line, the second line. But anyway, here's the second matchup for you, and that last match was actually recorded today. Like I said before, I was going to put this up yesterday, but I didn't like the garage bit that I'd done yesterday. I'd missed some bits out, and just wasn't happy with it. So I've re-recorded it, tried to, well, I've done it about 3 times I think now. Tried to get it down in time, but with everything that I needed to say, just couldn't. But when I was doing this, I'm digressing anyway. The last one was done today. It gave me a chance to, you know, have another couple of matches in this and try and get something better. And the one that I've just shown you was better than the one I was going to put in it from yesterday. This one, however, while I was recording this one, tier 7 match I think it is, standard battle, and yeah, I was recording it, and then all of a sudden my capture card decided to crash, and not only crash my laptop that I was recording on, but blue screen it, which was nice. So, cut a story short, there's a point in this towards the end, thankfully, where I just sit there and don't do anything, and that's because my screen had gone off, because when the laptop blue screened, well, it basically shut the power off to my capture card, which shut the image off to the screen, the TV screen. So, yeah, a bit blind until I got it back up. It did take a few seconds. Now, normally, I wouldn't bring this to a point like I am now, and especially not in a tier 8 match. This is a tier 7, so it's not as bad. the side armour on the hull isn't too savage. You know, there's far worse at the tier. And if you're careful, you can side scrape like I'm doing here. And I've just set myself up in a position. I've got a thin window to shoot through, sort of a small gap. And yeah, I'm just side scraping and taking opportunity to do damage to those guys as they try and come around, and holding them off. There's a heavy behind me putting shots in as well. And I don't know if they can't pen my turret, but they just seem to be bouncing off the side of my tank. So I just had to pause it there, clear my throat a bit, went a bit dry. That's why my voice went a bit funny just before. Now, as you can see, it's a bit iffy on penning the front of the hammer. That tiger's not quite angled as well, and I'm taking the odd hit. In fact, one of them I think starts firing HE at me in frustration, and I've got it positioned quite well, even if I do say so myself. But yeah, even at this distance, which is what, 260 metres, 250 metres, it's still 50-50 to get through the front of the tiger with 100mm of armour with a bit of angling on it. It was going through, but it still was a bit iffy. So, I mean, this is a tier 7, admittedly it doesn't have to see up to tier 9, but even at tier 7 you can sometimes struggle with the penetration on it. So I still rather aim for weak spots than just plugging away. And this hammer, yeah, he's had enough. He's definitely had enough, and that's why he's just charged down at me. And that was poorly done. I really should have turned my hull a bit more, but I can turn quicker than he can. I'm going to take another hit. Yeah, there we go. But the hammer, well, fingers crossed, I can either outmaneuver him, or, well, or that could happen. So that was handy. The heavy tank managed to take him out before I took any more hits. And, well, his teammates kind of let him down a bit there, didn't they? You see, he made a rush across the bridge, probably assuming, and rightly so, that they had the number advantage, which they did. There was me and a heavy. There were about 3 of them at least. And he charged across the bridge. And if his teammates had have followed, that could have been a very, very different story. But they didn't. They let him down, and seemed to have just buggered off. Unless they'd been killed, I could be slating them, and they died, and I just didn't notice. But they don't seem to be there, and neither do the carcasses, so I'm not entirely sure. So, oh, that's what I was saying. Yeah, this one, it doesn't go blank towards the end. I had to record it using the PlayStation, which is why the picture quality is not as good as it used to. So I do apologise, but it was a decent match, so I did want to show it. And it kind of shows another way that this can be used. You know, it doesn't have to be used in that support role. They were my, again, preconceptions, rightly or wrongly. But, you know, you live and learn, don't you? I just heard that much sort of negativity about this tank that I'd sort of let it get to me and sort of believed it a bit. There we go. Crashed. Edging forwards, not knowing what to do, thinking, oh Christ, here we go. But no, it comes out of it. But anyway, I'll use this opportunity to sort of wrap up about the Panther M10. Well, its gun has got an okay rate of fire, nothing special there. Its penetration is a bit lackluster for the tier, but it's workable. You will have to sling the odd premium ammunition, but it's definitely workable with just your normal AP. There are tanks in tier 8 where at range you will, like I say, you will struggle, so you're probably going to have to sling a bit of premium at them. But again, it's workable, but a bit average. One of the lowest damage for the tier as well, for the mediums. In fact, for any of them, I think. And one of the lowest pens. Hull armour, not bad. The Panther's not got bad hull armour, really. It's and it's been buffed on the front and the sides of the turret, which has given it a slight edge, and it can bounce more than the Tech Tree Panther can. So, you know, it does have these things going for it, but it does feel like a decidedly average tank. But if you've got one for free, I wouldn't moan about it. Just get out there, have a practice in it, and have a bit of fun. And if you've got a discount, well, it's up to you whether you'd actually like to buy it or not. It is cheaper to get it that way than to get out of the Tech Tree. But again, it's your money at the end of the day. I'm just here to show you what it's like, really. But there you go. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll be back tomorrow with another video. So take care out there, and I will catch you next time. See you later.